Hello, it's Scott Manley here with episode 52 of Interstellar Quest. Our bold crew and their spacecraft, the Eve Explorer, are plummeting down through Eve's gravity well for a rendezvous with the atmosphere. 69.752 kilometers is how low this thing will go into the turbulent atmosphere of the purple planet, hoping that the drag will slow the whole thing down and let them capture without expending any rocket fuel at all. Okay, we're slowing down, we gotta stow all this stuff away. The radiators are very important to close. We're not going to retrofit these. We've got the option, but I think that's cheating, because there's no place for them to get the new hardware. And let's close that. Retract that, and of course none of this is attached to action groups. Retract, and these retract our solar panels. It's a good thing we don't have to go outside and do this. And I really should try and retract these dishes, an antenna. The problem is that Remote Tech has broken them. And even if Remote Tech worked right now, by the way, as much as I love it, I can't install it because I have spacecraft that are in the middle of nowhere that I will never be able to activate because I won't be able to control them, because even though I have the antennas, I can't deploy them. Whatever. Okay, so none of my Remote Tech things are working, and at least the satellite, the solar panels are now deployed. And now we are skimming into the atmosphere, feeling its purple presence like an invisible hand dragging our ship, slowing it down. 105 kilometers we're reaching now. 4.75 kilometers per second. This is going to be fast, but hopefully we're going to be high enough up that we don't have to worry about basically catching fire and exploding, because this is going to be hot. It's not like the Duna aero capture where the deceleration was low enough that the shock heating was barely visible. Okay. So we're still picking up speed, actually, at this point. I wonder if we'll get up to 4.8 kilometers per second. 9. Oh, no, we're slowing down. We're slowing down now, yes, and the whole spacecraft is turning into the airstream. I should have probably pointed the rocket engines in that direction, thinking that the engines plus all that fuel is probably where most of the mass actually is. Besides, I don't think the crew want to go head on into the atmosphere of Eve. Looking down, they're trying to figure out what's below them, trying to make some guesses based. Oh, we got some heat. Trying to make some guesses based upon the scientific information they have already collected. I was remarking in the last episode. Ooh, yes. Let's talk nonchalantly about about scientific experiments while we're re-entering. Oh, 6.965. We're still descending. Man, we're going to go all the way down to 69.12. We're starting to go up again. That's the lifting body effect. Awesome. We are now returning to space. And you know what? I'm wondering whether the clouds beneath us, how fast those things actually move, because they look pretty awesome, as if they're almost keeping pace with us. Our apoapse is still an escape trajectory, but it is very quickly shooting downwards towards minus infinity, at which point it will cross over and become infinity. Yes, that is us. We are captured on a 200,000 kilometer orbit. 100,000 kilometer orbit. This is good. This is exactly what we want. Let's do science. We start having second thoughts about landing. Yes, I would too. Let's, okay, we're now 60,000 kilometers. This is a pretty good capture orbit. Wow, that is surprisingly good considering it is my first simulation attempt. 50 kilometers. And, let me see, get more science while we're here. Start observing. The materials bay, after an apparent deliberation, produces a liquid that is almost but not quite entirely unlike tea. My goodness, that's a reference to that entire series of books, movies, radio shows, and games called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The goo is sailing towards the planet. Is it homesick? It comes from the goo will one day assemble and become part of the giant purple people eater, right? The sensor spikes every time you pass over the ocean. The goo has become rubbery and bounces all around the container. Let's transmit all of my data. They actually spell that correctly in this case. The boys in the lab are working furiously to analyze this data. They are told, no, you can't sleep during re-entry because we have a very limited time period during which we can collect scientific data during our approach to the planet. Once we pass beyond that, we'll no longer be able to collect near data until we pass one more time. So I'm trying to get as much of this data in as possible and retransmit it. And the whole thing is wobbling like something very wobbly. I don't like the oscillations here. I'm hoping it stabilizes, because if it doesn't stabilize, I won't be able to have our Kerman step outside and do some science. Clean my experiments quickly. Clean, and head out back into space. Okay. Is there any other science that I can do right now before I disappear off into the great black yonder? Temperature. Log by temperature. You detect a definite heat signature from the planet below. Okay, well, we've got more of that data. Excellent. And yeah, this is too wobbly to EVA out. So I was commenting earlier about the science results that were saying that the oceans looked like they might be rocket fuel, and yet the gravity detector spiked every time you passed over the oceans. And I commented, oh, hey, why would the oceans be rocket fuel and mercury at the same time? And then, of course, I realized that is a perfectly reasonable thing. In fact, it seemed very reasonable when they were developing rocket fuel. There is a great book. It's actually available online for download. It's called Ignition. It's a history of rocket fuels by John D. Clark. And around page 178, they talk about trying to get higher density fuels, higher thrust, fuels, higher density fuels, lower specific impulse. And they figured out things like, oh yeah, if you inject mercury into your combustion chamber, you get much higher thrust. Of course, you have much heavier rockets, but during the early stage of the launch, the weight isn't so important. Now, during development, one of the guys had the idea to use dimethyl mercury. Now, dimethyl mercury, right, is where you've got a mercury atom in the middle of like a hydrocarbon chain, right? So you have a carbon with 3 hydrogens on one end and a carbon and 3 hydrogens on the other. And in the middle between them is a mercury atom. Now, that stuff is combustible. It's pretty flammable. And you can do it with regular oxidizer, and it gives you really high fuel densities. It is also one of the most hideously toxic substances ever manufactured by man. There is a famous case of a toxicology expert, a chemist, who was working with the substance and spilled a few drops on her rubber gloves. And, she cleaned up and everything. It was only later they realized that stuff absorbed through the gloves, through the protective rubber gloves, into her bloodstream and killed her within a year. Like, it's hideous stuff. And so they phoned Eastman Kodak and asked them if they would produce like a ton of this stuff for them, at which point they were rebuffed with much consternation. Anyway, we have successfully aerobraked and passed beyond the realm of near-Eve science. Let's go and see what's happening to our other spacecraft. The Eve Explorer is continuing its orbital trim maneuvers, trying to get closer to Gilly. It's going to be a series of corrections back and forth, and what we're going to do is take a big excursion out, and then hopefully it will then come around underneath us, and then we'll meet up at more or less Apoaps. This is the plan. We want to encounter it as slowly as possible, because it's quite possible that during the time of the encounter, we will not actually have any power or enough power coming from Kerbal and its beamed power system to really let us slow down sufficiently quickly. At the worst case, it can be, a tiny fraction of a g of acceleration, if we're only getting powered, say, from the solar power stations. They are continuing their journey towards the sun, and as they do, the amount of energy they're producing will rise, and hopefully by the time they're in super low solar orbit, they will be generating something equivalent to the what we would get from the planet. I say they, there's currently only one active at this time, but it is just one part of a very large network I have planned, if this thing works. Okay, so we're bringing it out, so there we go, get our encounter at Apoaps. That is our plan, there we go. That maneuver is 12 hours off, which means we can switch back to the Eve Explorer. Not Eve Exploder for people who keep mishearing it. So now we're at Apoaps. We're going to raise our periaps up to a reasonable altitude so that the spacecraft will stop aerobraking for now. We're not going to land at the planet, so we don't really need to slow down our orbit anymore. We just need to dip down, perform some science, and come back up. And then once we've done enough of that, we'll actually head over to Gilly. So that's us raised our periaps up to 132 kilometers. That should be high enough that the spacecraft will not encounter the atmosphere. But now we have our 2 atmosphere probes that we need to unleash so that they can apply their sensors to science. There we go. There, it's a docking node, a docking port here. We're obviously using docking ports rather than decouplers because we want to reuse this spacecraft when it returns to Kerbal. That's probe number 1 away. Moving away ever so slowly, probe number 2 will also be dropped. And we will, on alternate orbits, we won't land them on the same orbit because we want them to land in different locations. Ideally, we want one to land on the planet, on the land. Then we'll burn a little to get away. One we want to land on the terrestrial landscape, and the other we want to land in Eve's oceans containing, some horrific mercury-based fuel. If the Kerbals do land, maybe they'll hope that it's the less toxic version, the ethyl mercury version rather than the methyl mercury version. Methyl mercury is the bioaccumulative form that sits in your bloodstream and stays there basically forever, whereas the methyl mercury or ethyl mercury actually drains out with a much more reasonable half-life. Either way, you don't really want either of them, but okay, so we've got these moving away ever so slowly. Time to take control of one of them, and we'll set it on a date with Eve. And the good kind of Eve, the purple kind of Eve. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is rename the vessel to something so that we can distinguish them. Eve Explorer Probe 1. And it's got all the hardware. You see it has a parachute sitting under the nose cone. It doesn't actually look like it's attached. But using the RCS, we're just going to give it a little pulse backwards now, bringing up the map so we can actually see how low the altitude is. We want to bring this low enough that it will re-enter and be captured on this pass. So I think, 64 kilometers. That's what we're going to go for. It only took a tiny part of its delta V to do that. Really, this only needs a most tiny amount. Back to our space probe satellite. We have the maneuver to carry out. It's very important that we do this to make sure that it encounters Gilly. We're just waiting for everything to be lined up. Now we have 45 megawatts of power available to this engine. Activate that engine and off it goes. So the maneuver, you can see it's going to take a few minutes. Thankfully, of course, we have the power of time acceleration to make this a little more manageable. Specific impulse is still the completely fantastic 11,200. Of course, that's coming from a plasma engine. Plasma engines, I was trying to explain the other day, and I think I made a big mess about explaining it. The thing about a plasma engine is it's essentially a thermal engine with a magnetic field used to contain the superheated material, instead of, say, a physical rocket nozzle. When because it's so hot, right, it's heated up by microwaves, then if it were to touch the side, it would cool down. But by making it held by a magnetic field, they can keep it away from anything that would cool it down and make it ridiculously hot, and therefore get really good specific impulses out of these things. But that really good specific impulse has put us almost there. Almost there. Closest approach would be a couple of 100 kilometers. And there we go, we got our encounter and we are good to go. We will be meeting Gilly in a few days. But in the intervening time, We return to Kerbin for the next step in our solar probe project. Obviously, you don't want to watch this whole thing. It's identical launch vehicle, identical launch process. Actually, I got a slightly better orbit on this, which, the last one was really a worst case scenario. I improved this a little, and we once again set out for deep space, propelled by chemical propellants, and then ultimately, once we detach and deploy everything, we can fire out those decouplers and fold everything out like a giant virus, right? As people pointed out very correctly. Bacteriophage or whatever. Yes, deploy my solar panels and head off under the power of plasma into my sun-dipping orbit to arrive 21 days from now, by which time we should have probably launched another one of these things. I want to have quite a few of these things. Interesting to note is that at higher time acceleration, this thing really does start to look, I don't know, it kind of makes me think of a jellyfish, the way it wobbles, like it's almost like a dome. It's pretty cool the way to watch, the way it happens. But anyway, moving swiftly on, we return to our space probe on its intrepid mission into the depths of Eve's atmosphere. It doesn't know what's below those clouds. Honestly, it's not caring because it's an automated probe with no emotions, we hope. Otherwise, we're committing a sentient probe to be stuck on a planet forever. Well, yeah, so we're doing a re-entry at this point. Hopefully this will capture us and bring us down. 4 kilometers per second, and already, I guess I have a stray maneuver node, which I would really like to remove, but I won't be able to do that until the next version. Instead, we get to watch this thing re-enter 66 kilometers up, 65 kilometers up. That's it. Slow him down and bring him into the atmosphere. We want to get that sweet, sweet, sweet atmospheric science. We want to share it with the world, and we want to call this thing a hero to other space probes. Yeah, the ablative heat shield is protecting me pretty well, and I think we're reaching periaps, and we are going up. We may not be getting captured on this pass. Keep slowing, atmosphere. You can do it. It's so close. It's so close to being able to put this down here. 1,000 kilometer apoaps, dropping rapidly, but I am, of course, rising up rapidly. Deceleration here is about 1G. And we've picked up some sort of spin here. Hopefully that doesn't damage the spacecraft. I'm obviously doing this as carefully as possible because deadly re-entry is, it's deadly. Although technically the probe won't die because it's an inanimate object. But it will be a shame if we have to go back into Kerbin to get another one. Okay, and we're still decelerating at about half a G, 70 kilometers up now. I think that we may have... I don't know, we'll see how well we're doing. Maybe we'll end up slow enough to get captured. No science at this altitude either. We want to wait until we're in the upper atmosphere. We have 2 probes. One's going to have to do the upper atmosphere science. The other one will have to do... We're going to have to we're going to have to bring it around for another pass. And if you notice where the day-night thing is, we actually really want to lift it up because this thing is solar powered. And during descent, we don't want to lose power. So I'm going to raise the periaps by firing at apoaps. And hopefully that will allow the spacecraft to travel around the planet and then perform its descent on the daytime side of the planet. And there's the other spacecraft, of course, flying through periaps, and I'm not even caring about it. I totally missed the chance for some Kerbals to do some EVA. But yes, we've reached apoaps. I hope we have enough delta V here. We have 30 plus units of monopropellant. We only need to raise this high enough that it doesn't descend brick-like into the atmosphere. We need it to kind of skip through the atmosphere and come out the other side and then land on the daytime side of the planet. So 72 kilometers, a little higher. Just keep going a little higher and we will be okay. I think that is us. We'll just reorient the spacecraft, make sure that we land correctly. One more pass around the purple planet of Eve, and then the atmospheric science will be mine to hoard. But that's in the next episode. Until then, I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.